Welcome. Finally, we have some snow, and yeah, I decided to go out and try to get some of the snowy winter photos. Finally, snow. Look at it. It's not some great snowy landscape, but let's see what we can get. Yeah, and I want to talk about a little bit of struggling with snow photos. Do you guys struggle with the snow photos? Because I know that I do, and I'm gonna give you guys a couple of tips and basically what to, just consider when you are on location and later in your post-processing. A couple of tips of how to actually get the photos look best, the photos with the snow. So let's try to find some composition here in the Fruška Gora mountain and see what we can get. Let's go. Okay, I'm starting to think that this might not have been the best day to actually record this video, but I don't know if we are gonna get any more snow, so why not? As you can see, the weather is pretty much gray and even some fog is now came down, so I don't know if this is gonna work. I'm struggling to find the composition, but who cares? I'm having great time actually just being outside on the fresh air and on the Fruška Gora mountain. So yeah, this will do. This will have to do. So there are two different things that your camera is going to struggle with. First one is white balance. Second one is exposure. The white balance, because snow is white and it's going to reflect everything that is above it. So basically, if you have a blue sky, you're going to end up with blue snow in your photos. And if it's gray like this and it's fog, then you're going to just have like a gray snow. Anyway, second one, the exposure. Usually your camera is set to when it's metering the scene, it's going to expose everything. It's going to tell you that the proper exposure is 18% gray. That is why, because every camera is calibrated to use 80% gray card, and that is something that's basically let me try to explain. It's a middle between completely black paper and completely white. So it's not linear, it's not 50%, it's 18%. Anyway, without me going through something that I personally don't have much knowledge to, explain it to you guys, go ahead, Google it and try to figure out yourself. Anyway, let's take one of the photos here. I'm gonna use myself as a subject and I'm gonna go down this road and I'm gonna set my camera to shoot some intervals and let's try to create something cool out of something that is not cool. Hopefully my blue jacket is gonna be a nice contrast here, so let's see how it's gonna work. Okay, so as you can see right now, I've set my camera to exposure that my camera thinks it's proper exposure. As you can see, it's pretty dark, so yeah, that's not gonna work. So what I'm gonna do is and what you should actually do when you're on location is just take a look at a photo, take a look at the back of your screen and just overexpose. That's basically everything that you can do. So yeah, I'm going to set the exposure to what I think is close enough to proper exposure, and I'm gonna take a couple of photos, and after that we're gonna see in post-processing what else we can do with that photos. Let's go. Okay, I am back at home and I have my images in Lightroom, and now let's take a look how else we can improve them. So as you can see, we have a couple of underexposed images, as well some of the properly exposed images, or what I believe they were properly exposed images. So let's start first with the underexposed one. As you can see, we have, if you look at a histogram, we have absolutely no highlights or whites in this image. Although it may look at first that it's okay, it pretty much isn't. So let's start with first trick, let's say, when you start editing your snow photos. First of all, let's switch our background to white. This will actually be a great reference to what really is white. And as you can see, now we pretty much see how underexposed this image is. So let's start working on it, on this image first. Let's first crop this to something, I believe 1:1 would be actually good for this image. Something like this would probably be best. Good tip when you're cropping images, always take a look at the thumbnail here. It can give you more guidelines to how the image will gonna look. You know, sometimes you don't see everything when you're looking at the big picture here, so thumbnail can be a really good way to actually see a new viewpoint at your image, let's say like that. Anyway, I'm happy with this crop, so let's start working with our exposure and temperature. Now, temperature here is pretty much okay. If we change this to auto, it's probably gonna warm it up. Yeah, I don't like that, so let's just return to this, maybe even a bit cooler, maybe something like, let's say, something like this. Yeah, this is okay. And now we can start working on the exposure. We're gonna have to match the snow with the white. Maybe not all the way, but you know, like I said, the white background is gonna be a great reference to know what white should be in the image. So let's just bring our exposure up quite a bit, something like this, and then also whites. And now we are getting close to what white should look like. Let's for now leave it maybe even a bit more, something like that. Yeah. Now when we are bringing exposure up, it's gonna wash up our image a bit, so let's just bring the shadows down as well as the blacks. It's gonna bring back a little bit of contrast. I don't like to use contrast slider here, so I'm kind of using shadows, blacks, whites, and also curves. So in the curves, let's add medium contrast. Currently we have it set here, but we may copy this channel settings and paste it to every other. It's gonna just bring a little bit more of color contrast. There we go. And I think this now looks fine. Now let's deal with the clarity and decays. There was some fog there, and I would like to exaggerate that a little bit. So I'm not gonna add in clarity, actually I'm gonna reduce the clarity. Basically, what usually people tend to do is just boost the clarity all the way, and that's something that I was doing with my photos as well, but lately I'm actually reducing clarity. That's just introducing a little bit of mystery in the photo, and it actually looks pretty nice in photos with fog and snow. So this may be a little bit too much, so maybe like something like this, but I also want to counter that with the texture, so I'm gonna add a little bit of texture so we can have some of the details in these branches and trees, and also a little bit of decays. Something like this is gonna be just fine. I'm not gonna be dealing with vibrance and saturation or any other way dealing with the colors here, except I want to add a specific mood to this image. So I want to make this like a cool bluish winter photo. So there are a couple of ways that we can do it. We can actually use the color grading wheels, or we can use the split toning if you're on the older version of Lightroom. That way we can actually separate where we want the tones. I actually want this only in the highlights, but since I don't want in the snow, I'm not going to be using this. What I'm going to be using is actually graduated filter. And let's just reset everything to 0, and let's just bring a nice big graduated filter, something about here maybe. If we hold the mouse, you can see what it's going to be affected, and this is something that I had in mind, maybe like this, maybe just a bit down there. And let's add color. Basically you can choose whatever color you want. Like I said, I want to add like a bluish tone to the image, so something like this. Of course this is too much, so let's just pick the color that we want, and then we will just lower the saturation and get to where we want it to be. So something like this adds a bit of mystery, and I think this is just fine. Also, when you're done with this, I don't want it in the shadows, I don't want it in the trees and the branches, so I just want it in the highlights. So I'm gonna use a range mask, and I'm gonna use the luminous range mask, and I'm just pull it out of the shadows and leave it only in the highlights, something like that. Now when we look at the image, this is where we are at, and I'm pretty happy with it. We can take a look at before and after. So this is the before, this is where we started, and this is where we are now. What else maybe we can do here? Maybe even just push a little bit more of the exposure. So let's try something like this. Yeah, this is now perfect. Maybe we are clipping some of the highlights, but I don't see it. Yeah, nothing is clipped, so this is perfect. What else we can do? We can just add a little bit of clarity to our subject, or myself here. So maybe let's use the brush tool and add a little bit of clarity, something like that, maybe even a little bit of contrast, and let's start painting over our subject. It's gonna make him pop up a little bit, something like that. I'm not being too precise here, so just, you know, roughly going over the subject. Yeah, this is probably gonna be just fine. Let's just see how it's affecting. Yeah, something like this. I think this is gonna be, oops, just great. Yeah, and now let's just lower it a little bit, and done. So we can check what we have done with this. Maybe, yeah. This is without the brush, this is with. So it's just, you know, making a little bit of difference, and that's just enough. Again, I'm gonna use the graduated filter just to add some dimension to the photo. I'm gonna reset everything, and I'm just gonna bring down some of the exposure here in the, you know, front, so in the bottom of the image, and I think this image is done. Again, this is the before and this is the after. Well, that's it. I hope you liked this video, and I hope it was helpful. If you did, please hit the like button and leave a comment. If you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe. It means a lot. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.